What is good, everyone? This is your host, Deanna Radulescu with Label Free Podcast. To live your best life, you must live label free. As always, bring incredible guests from all over the world. So sit back, relax, and tune in. My next guest is an author, speaker, influencer, and his name is Dr. Tom Cowan. Dr. Tom, welcome to the show.
Thank you, and you can call me Tom.
Okay, Tom, cool. So you were prior to us recording, we were talking a little bit about what you're known for, and I find it very interesting. You said to me that there's no such thing as COVID and no such thing as viruses. I want to know, well, first of all, you are a visionary in the field of alternative medicine. So let's just put that background there for people so they understand. So I'd like to know a little bit about where there's no such thing as a virus comes from.
Right. So I was trained as a medical doctor and did some family practice, and I've been a GP doing so-called alternative medicine for 37 years, and then retired in 2020. And I'm no stranger to questioning things that we all think we know. Like I wrote a book, The Heart is Not a Pump, and that blocked arteries don't cause heart attacks, and vaccines are neither safe nor effective, and cancer has nothing to do with genetics. And in fact, DNA is not even a double helix, or at least hasn't been shown to be, and is not even the code of life, and has nothing to do with cancer. But recently, I've known about this for years, but I never really looked into it that much until so-called COVID. I turned my attention to looking at the scientific evidence, the logical, rational science behind the claim of the existence of viruses. Okay. Now, I think we should probably, your audience may be interested in that. I don't know, but it's a big.
This is a label, right? Where we've been taught to believe certain things about our bodies and how, like, we get sick. So I find it very fascinating, and I'm always willing to learn more. I have a very open mind, and my audience that come here because they want to hear interesting stories, thought-provoking conversations. So this is very thought-provoking. Yes, let's dive into it.
Right. The first thing I want to say, just a background. One of the principles that most people don't understand about science or logic and rational thinking is that when somebody makes a claim, then you investigate the veracity of that claim, and you don't need to have an alternative theory about the claim. Okay. Let me just give you an example of that. Somebody is 18 and he goes in his parents' closet. He finds out there's adoption papers, and he actually thought about that because he doesn't look like his parents. He goes to his mother and says, "It's true I was adopted because you never told me." She said, "Yeah, it's true. We got you from this orphanage, etc. I was never pregnant." And so that he's verified that issue. Then he goes to his friend and he says, "Here, I just found out today after 18 years that, I'm adopted. My mother confirmed it, etc." And the friend says, "So who are your real parents?" He says, "I don't know. I just found out yesterday." He says, "Well, if you can't tell me who your real parents are, then I don't believe you were adopted." That's ridiculous, right?
Yeah.
He may never find.
But I understand what, like, the thought concept there.
Yeah, he may never know, and it has no bearing on. So if I say there's no virus, and usually people say, "So what makes me sick?" That is an anti-scientific question, right? The claim is, let's go through this because virology stands on 5 pillars.
Okay.
The first one is that sick people make well people sick, or animals, right?
Okay.
My friend has a cold. I went to his house. I got a cold. My daughter get chicken pox from somebody, etc. So let's just dissect the principle there. The principle is, this is an observation that if two or more people or animals get sick in the same place at the same time with the same symptoms. Therefore, something was passed between one animal or person to the next, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Right. So if you put 100 rats in the basement and then somebody unbeknownst to you puts rat poison and the next day 10 rats are dead, all bled to death, and
Yeah.
then the next day 20, and then the next day all 100 are dead, same symptoms, same time, same place. Does
Right.
that mean there's something passed between the rats?
Hmm.
No, right?
Right.
They ate
Right.
rat poison. How
Right.
about they used to say hundreds of years they saw sailors on ships, one after another. Their teeth fell out, they went into heart failure, and they died. They said this is a contagious disease, and something is being passed from one sailor to the next. They quarantined them, and they all dropped dead because they had scurvy, which is not a contagious disease. This
Interesting.
happened with
Okay.
pellagra. It happened with beriberi. You'd see families get sick all at the same time, same symptoms, rash, psychiatric issues, etc. They said it was contagious. They quarantined them, and they died because they had a nutritional deficiency. My point is, we can't tell if something is being passed between people or there's some exposure to something you may not be aware of.
Sure.
So you have to do science. You have to
Yeah.
do a controlled experiment. You take 10 people, put them in a room with somebody who's sick, take 10 people, put them in a room with somebody who's not sick. The wallpaper is the same because the wallpaper may have arsenic in it because wallpaper has arsenic. And so it's outgassing. So everything is the same. And then you see whether a sick person makes a well person sick, right? That's
Yeah.
how you. I can guarantee you, after 4 years of looking with, say, approximately 10 to 20 other friends who are doctors and scientists, there is not a single paper published in the medical literature that shows that sick animals or people make well animals or people sick. Not
Wow.
one. In
Wow.
fact, the most important one was a study called the Rossino experiment. 1918, they took people with the Spanish flu, right? Supposedly the
Yeah.
most contagious illness ever. They took 100 prisoners, they bribed them, they said, if you do this, we'll let you out. They had people who are active Spanish flu, right? Same symptoms,
Yeah.
cough in their mouth, breathe in their mouth. They took snot out of their nose and squirted it up their nose. They had them in the same room. They injected
Yeah.
snot into the thing,
Ooh.
and this was written about in the Boston Health Department and the San Francisco Health Department. Clear studies. Not one person got sick. This has been done with chicken pox. You take the lesions, you scrape it on
Yeah.
well children who never had chicken pox, and nobody gets sick. You cannot prove that observation that you are being made sick by somebody else is scientifically valid.
Hmm.
And that is a fact, whether
That's
people
mind
like
blowing.
it or not.
That's mind blowing. So then why do we have this idea? Why have we been taught this idea that if we're exposed to someone with that is sick, that we're going to get sick? Like that, I didn't believe in the whole mask thing. I'm just going to say that right now. I think everybody that listens and knows me knows that was not about the whole COVID thing. And I don't believe, I still don't believe that that would be helpful. So why is it that we are made to believe that?
So, not to be rude or anything, but any answer I would give would be complete speculation on my part. I don't know.
Okay.
You're asking me the motives of people to convince you to do an unscientific intervention, an intervention that can only make you sick and not prevent any disease, because they can't demonstrate that any disease is prevented or is caused by transmission from one person to another. Why did they do it? I mean, to terrorize the population.
Sure. Well, for COVID specifically, but I'm just talking about prior to that, prior to we had a pandemic. Why is it that we've been programmed to think this way? And do you think it's always been to terrorize the population, or that was just a best case scenario to tell people? Because I understand what you're saying is
So,
your opinion is based on speculation, but there's a reason why you are having this conversation and you are believing and firmly believing and talking about these things.
so let me be clear. I don't believe in anything except what the facts show me.
Sure. Right.
The facts, I have asked all the people who, quote, believe in the so-called germ theory, or I like to call it the disproven germ hypothesis, uh, to show me a study that shows that one person makes another person sick, they're transmitting something, and they can't do it. So why do people tell them that that's going on? Because they're either ignorant and they don't know the science, or they have nefarious intentions. It's one of the two.
Hi, guys. This is your host, Deanna Radulescu with Label Free Podcast. I'm here to share another exciting partnership with you. I have joined forces with doTERRA. They are the leading provider of high-quality essential oils. I've got some here I like to consume, the ones that are consumable. So like sweet orange is really great. I also really, really love their toothpaste. Natural whitening and just kind of really helps clean your mouth. You know, we do carry a lot of germs in our mouth, but I've loved this toothpaste. I've ordered it many times. These are some supplements. Here is the Lifelong Vitality Pack. Really great products, high quality products. Definitely recommend it. I also really love the collagen. NMN is a proven anti-aging product. So the collagen and the NMN together is a real game changer. I'm big into collagen. I believe it. I've been taking it for like 20 years before it's even gotten so popular. And that's probably why I maintain my skin elasticity, my hair and nails. I highly recommend checking out doTERRA if you're a fan of high quality essential oils. Not all essential oils are created the same. Go click the links in the description, sign up, or take advantage of one of my bundles that I'm recommending to you with the toothpaste, also the cleaning products and the supplements. So you guys, thank you so much for tuning in. We really appreciate you, and stay tuned for more to come.
Well, we saw that the ignorance and they couldn't prove the science with COVID. Right? I mean, they made us all believe that we couldn't get close to each other. We'd be
Right.
6 feet apart, or else we're potentially die, which was just ridiculous. And just the propaganda around
Right.
it was just wild. And so here you have a very well-known doctor going on TV for the CDC or whatever it was. I don't even remember whatever his name was, and telling people all these crazy things. But you're saying that none of these studies or none of our belief systems are based on facts.
No, they are belief system. But
Yeah.
let me go to the next step of virology,
Okay.
right?
All right, let's go.
Okay, so we already know that contagion, as we understand it, is not accurate, right? Because we've proven that.
Right.
So then, but this somehow didn't stop the virus hunters. So they took diseases that they thought were caused by an unseen entity. It's sort of like demons and witches and all that. So instead of that, they said it's a virus.
Yeah.
And they took fluid from the sick people with that disease. Now, in the beginning, one of the first ones was polio, right? So they were seeing, and by the way, I'm not saying that people don't get sick. I'm saying that the cause of it is not a virus. So they took people with polio symptoms like paralysis or what, all the different symptoms they get, and they took the part of them that was diseased, like the spine, and they ground it up in a blender and they filtered it so they get rid of the debris in the cells. And so now they have the liquid that has the virus in it, they say.
Okay.
They don't see a virus. They can't see a virus. They have no observation that there's a virus. They just say this would be the part that's a virus. It's called it's called filtration. So they're talking about the filterable fraction of a sick person. So you take somebody's lung tissue or lungs fluid or snot, you centrifuge it or filter it, you get the liquid part, you expose another animal or person to that liquid part, see if they get sick, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Now, the first thing I would say is that's not a test of a virus, because unless you think that the only soluble part in somebody's diseased, ground up spine is a virus, which is ridiculous, then
Yeah.
you're not testing a virus. You're testing ground up spinal fluid or snot,
Right.
right? So,
Yeah. Yeah.
anyways, but they did it anyways. And again, I can assure every listener there is not one study that shows that the filterable fraction of any sick person makes any animal or person sick when given in a controlled way in a normal situation. In other words, you take that's filtered snot and you
Yeah.
spray it on somebody, and then you spray saline, right? So it's not just
Yeah.
the spraying. There's
Yeah.
not one study that shows that that makes anybody sick. Not
Yeah.
one. Now, let me go through why do they say that it does? Well, there was a famous polio study, 1907, where they took a child who had died of polio. They took their spine that was diseased, ground it
Hmm.
up, got the filterable part, right?
Hmm.
Injected that into the brains of two monkeys. One
Wow.
monkey died, the other got paralyzed. They held the monkey up by the scruff of the neck and said, "This proves polio is caused by a virus." And when I
Wow.
read that, I thought, you have got to be kidding me. First of all, you would think they would inject a control, right? You're talking about
Right.
injecting 10 cc's of diseased spinal goop in a little monkey's head. You
Yeah.
would think they would inject saline or something,
Right.
and
Right.
they didn't.
I
And
think anybody would die from that, right?
you don't know. That's not
Right.
science. That's torturing a monkey for no reason, because and you certainly don't know that it's not a protein or an enzyme or some toxin that was in the spine, or you don't know there's a virus in there. You've never
Right.
seen a virus. And that's how, that when they say, well, we transmitted COVID, they take, the lung fluid of somebody, they filter it, they inject that into the lungs of like a ferret. The ferret gets a cough. They don't
Right.
do a control, and they say, see, we transmitted the virus. That is that is the epitome of anti-scientific nonsense.
Yeah. Sounds almost like mad scientist.
It's it's
Like
it's
let's just see if this works, like I don't know.
it's crazy. And I can tell you, and again, all your listeners, there's not one study, and anybody out there can prove me wrong. Show me the filterable fraction of any sick person's biological fluid will make an animal or person sick, and there is not one study.
Wow.
Okay,
That is
so
mind blowing.
that's the
Okay.
second one. Now, the third one is really interesting because, and I want to get you involved in this, because we're going to use it as a thinking tool. So
Okay.
how do you know? Let's say I say there's a tool called a Hamlet, and this tool can knock in nails, right?
Hmm.
And now, uh, tell me how you would go and verify that such a thing exists.
Um
Or
so,
let's say use a different one, a hammer. Like
okay,
that.
hammer.
How do you know a
Yeah.
hammer exists?
Because I physically can hold it in my hand.
Right. So tell me again if you think I'm wrong here. You go to the place you would expect to find a hammer, which is a toolbox.
Right.
You open it up, you take out the hammer and say, I can see this hammer exists, right?
Correct. Yes.
That's called the isolation of a hammer.
Right.
You
Okay.
have only a hammer. You can do it with a frog. You go to a
Right.
pond, you get a net, you fish out the frog. You say, I have a frog. I know there's a frog. And then you can find out, what does a hammer do? What is a
Okay.
hammer made of? Hammer's made of iron and steel
Right.
and rubber. What does a hammer do? It hits in nails. How do you know that? You take the hammer, you hit in a nail, and now I could say, Deanna, how do you know it's not just your arm doing like this that makes the nail go in? So you could do a control. You could go like this with your arm, nail doesn't go in.
Right.
So it's the hammer, right?
Right.
You've
Right.
proven, so you isolate it, you experiment with it, and do controls.
Right.
Okay? You can
Yes.
do that with a frog. What is a frog made of? You isolate the frog, you dissect it, find out what it's made of. Does it eat flies? Same thing there. You just see if it
Yeah.
eats flies, only the hammer. Now, Deanna,
Right.
let's say I said to you, okay, I'm going to prove there's a hammer and it knocks in nails. I'm going to take this toolbox and I'm going to hit a nail with it. And I don't know if there's a hammer in there or not because I didn't look. And that proves that there's a hammer exists and it knocks in nails. Do you believe it?
No, because you're just saying that you're taking the toolbox. You're not saying that you're taking the actual hammer.
Right.
Yeah.
In other words, that is a irrational thing to conclude
Correct.
because anybody would know that if you want to say it's a hammer, you have to have only the
Right.
hammer.
Right. So
Now,
it's just kind of like a veil statement. It's not an actual an ideal statement. I don't know if that's the correct word, but like a hammer is a hammer, toolbox is there's two separate things.
right. A toolbox may have a hammer in it, but in order to verify that, you got to look and find it.
Right.
Now, here's how they isolate a virus.
Okay.
So you do that procedure with everything. The only change is technique that you isolate, right? With
Right.
with a toolbox, you open it up and take it out. With a frog, you get a net. If it's a nanoparticle, you use electricity and that separates out the thing you're looking for. If it's the sun, you go in the shade versus the sun. So you've sort
Yeah.
of isolated the sun, right?
Yeah.
So we do that with everything in order to find out whether something exists and what it's made of and what it does.
Okay.
So
Right.
here's how all virologists isolate a virus. It started in 1954. They take somebody, say, with measles, right?
Mm-hmm.
They take their mucus. They put it in a centrifuge so that they get the liquid part, which has proteins and enzymes and nucleic acids, and maybe the virus. They don't see it, right?
Sure. Yep.
Now, they've never once seen a virus in that biological fluid. Never. We know that for a fact. They say you cannot see it in the
Wow.
snot. So
Okay.
so that's not how so they take that fluid and they put it on monkey kidney cells in a dish. And then they add antibiotics that are toxic to kidney cells. They take away the food of the growing cells and they add other chemicals like trypsin. And then they
Okay.
wait for a few days. They add serum from a fetal calf. And then they see if the cells break down. If the cells break down, in other words, the kidney cells die, remember that they put in kidney cell toxic antibiotics.
Right.
And they say this proves the isolation of the measles virus.
Again, that sounds like to me mad scientists that you're not really proving anything. You are just throwing a bunch of shit into something to see if you can prove your theory, not where you're not actually proving a fact of how if the measles is contagious.
Right. In fact, you don't even, there's no step in that process in which you've even shown there is a measles virus.
Right, right.
And then
So-
And then we, by the way, and this has been done 5 times since this way was started in 1954, we did an experiment where we took these same monkey kidney cells, the same antibiotics, the same fetal calf serum, the same nutrient broth for the cells. Now, this time we didn't add anything from anybody with measles or any illness, or not. We didn't add anything from anybody. So
Okay.
there was no virus, and we proved that the cells break down in the exact same way as with if you add the snot from the measles virus, measles patients,
Wow.
proving that it's the conditions of the experiment that kill the kidney cells which
Right.
are specially bred to break down, by the way, and not any purported measles virus, which has never at that point been found. And every single isolation experiment in virology for the last 70 years has been done in that way. So
Mm.
every time you hear SARS-CoV-2 was isolated, that's how they did it. They put it into a monkey kidney cells. The cells broke down. They didn't do a control because they can't, because that would mean that they would have had to take the virus out. But we have now got freedom of information responses from the CDC and the NIH, et cetera. Show me a paper that finds this any virus,
Yeah.
SARS-CoV-2, measles, smallpox, in the biological fluids of anybody who's sick. They say 225 of them. There is no paper that says that.
That's wild.
And the
That's wild.
virologists say you cannot do that. Now, imagine I said to you, I know why these houses are being blown up in the Ukraine. It's exploding unicorns.
Okay.
What would you say?
Well, first of all, I would love to see the unicorn. That would be
No,
great.
Deanna,
Okay.
you can't see the unicorn. The unicorns are invisible.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't know if I couldn't believe that, because I would have to see it to believe it.
And that's the problem with the viruses. Now, once they break down in the tissue culture, right? The monkey cells break down. Now they show you electron microscope pictures of something in that mix. And they say this is the virus. Now, it is clearly and this is so the fourth foundation of virology. So we isolated it, so-called, even though everybody would say that's not what we mean by isolation. So you've never even shown that there's a virus. Now, then we get into what's called reification fallacies. So the reason you can't see this unicorn, Deanna, is it's invisible. Now, that's ascribing a property to something which you don't even know exists.
Then it takes away the how we perceive science. Then science has got no basis on facts. Like
no basis in fact. In this case,
that's just crazy to me.
It's crazy.
Okay.
Now, so they show you a picture of something, and they claim this is a picture of the virus. But in the literature, there are study after study showing pictures of broken down monkey kidney cells, which they say and prove are indistinguishable from the so-called virus. Wow. In other words, nobody knows whether they're just the tissue breaking down, and it breaks down into little particles that if you freeze it and stain it with heavy metals and shoot a high intensity beam at it so it dehydrates all the water, and you get these little spherical things that show up. You have no idea that that is a infectious, contagious particle that has any relevance for our health. All you know is that things are breaking down, and you're seeing a bunch of debris in your microscope picture. So that's the fourth pillar. The fifth pillar is, but Deanne, we've sequenced the genome, right? You've heard that. And we make a PCR test, which is a part of the genome. Now, interestingly, the guy who came up with the PCR test for SARS-CoV-2 said, well, this was challenging. I've quoted this so many times I can do it by heart, because we came up with the pieces of the genome without ever seeing the virus. Now, think about that. I tell you there's a unicorn. You say, how do you know? I say, look, Deanna, I have this piece of hair.
Yeah.
Right? I got a piece of it here. I got this hair, and I found the hair at various places around the world. And you would say to me, I hope, How do you know it's from the unicorn?
Right.
Did you ever see the unicorn? No. Well, how do you know it's from the unicorn? Because in
Yeah.
order to do a PCR or antigen or antibody test, you have to first show that the piece came from an actual thing.
Right. Right.
If I say I have a hoof, you say, how do you know it's not a cow? You
Yeah.
say, show me the unicorn. No, I can't show you the unicorn because the unicorn hides in the bushes. The virus hides in the cell, right? They
Okay.
tell you that nonsense. Now, how do you know it's hiding in the cell if you've never
But,
seen?
yeah,
And how
that's
do you
pretty
know this piece is from the virus if they admit they've never even seen or worked with the virus? And
weird.
then you'd have to show that nothing else has that piece of stuff, right? Because
Yeah.
otherwise it could be from a cow. And it
Hmm.
turns out that the PCR, it's positive for at least 93 segments of the human being, which, by the way, is where you got the piece from, right? You
Right.
got it from
Right.
somebody's lungs. And about 90 different microbes have that same sequence. So
Yeah.
there's microbes like bacteria and stuff and
Right.
fungi
Right.
in your lungs. So you don't know it's not from that.
Right.
And that's the fifth pillar of virology. And the bottom line is it's a whole big crock of nonsense.
Sounds like it to me. Tom, we're gonna start wrapping things up here, but I want to ask a couple more questions before we start bringing it to a close. I think I know why, but I want you to answer it. Why is it important to you to talk about this belief, changing our belief system around what a virus is?
Because if we are a scientifically illiterate culture,
Yeah.
we don't even, and what I mean by that is if you say, go to anybody or including your doctor, everybody out there should go to their primary care doctor tomorrow and say, do you believe there's viruses? Yes. Tell me how a virologist finds a virus, proves that it exists, and proves that it causes disease. I can guarantee you that doctor won't know.
Well, right. Yeah, probably
Now,
not.
think about this. What does it mean to be in a culture of people who have no idea of this important, right? This important belief. Like
Yeah.
the whole world got closed down because of a belief system.
Right.
Yet, even the priests of this belief system, they don't even know where it came from.
Right.
They don't know
Yeah.
anything about it. That
Yeah.
is a dangerous situation because they can manipulate you up the wazoo if you don't know where this is coming from. And they do that about DNA, and they do it about, I could give you a list as long as your arm or more of
Yeah.
things that, if you ask people, how do you know there's a nucleus in the atom? I don't know. I just
Yeah.
believe that because I was told that.
Right.
Turns out not true.
Huh.
How do you know there's electrons? A guy named Erwin Schrödinger, one of the most important
Yeah.
physicists of all time, says, if you looked in an atom, you'd never see an electron. They don't exist. They don't tell
Wow.
you that.
No.
And so everybody's going around believing there's this thing called electron. That's why there's electricity and blah, blah, blah. And
Yeah.
yet the very people who came up with the theory say, yeah, it's not true. We just made it up.
Wild. You're blowing my mind right now. I'm sure anybody that's listening is like their head's probably exploding all over the place. Like you've obviously invested a lot of time and energy in doing research to prove these what you're telling us. So wow.
That's
What
an understatement.
why don't you? And so here's just like a question. Why don't you do an independent study and get a control group and try to find the virus or prove it yourself? Since you obviously
We did that.
Oh, you did.
We did that. We did exactly the way they isolate the virus.
You yourself did?
No, I'm part of a group. I'm not a laboratory virologist.
Oh, okay.
We hired a group and we said, do the controls that have never been done. They did them. They showed that there is no evidence that there's a virus. The end of story.
Wow. Okay, well, final question. Then we're going to start wrapping
I
things up.
happened to raise the money. I was good at that. So I got my listeners to come up with the money to fund the study. It cost
Yeah.
about $25,000. Now, virology is a $1 trillion endeavor. So they have $1 trillion to do their research. We
Right.
had 25,000 and we proved them wrong.
This is awesome. Okay, then I guess for the sake of argument, someone would say then, okay, why do people get sick then?
So what if you don't tell me who your real parents are, I don't believe you were adopted.
Okay, I'll speak for myself. So I got sick in January, the beginning of January, and I got sick in the beginning of February. I'm great now, but it was like I got hammered back to back, and I've never gotten sick like that before. Now I can't attribute it to anything except that perhaps I was in the wrong environment or I just ran my body down, but I don't know because I'm not
Okay,
a virologist.
because the biggest psyop of all, not the biggest, one of the biggest in medicine is, and let me walk you through this. If you get a splinter in your finger and you make pus, right?
Yeah.
Is the pus a disease or is it the therapy for the splinter?
I so I don't know, but I would like to say it's the therapy for the splinter.
Right. Because
Okay.
it gets the splinter out and then your finger heals.
Okay.
So that which the doctors unfortunately call a disease, you have an infection, is actually your body's wonderful therapeutic attempt.
Right.
Right? And you can
Yes.
prove that because as soon as it gets the splinter out, it goes away.
Yeah.
Okay, now I put some splinters, otherwise known as debris, in your lungs. What's going to happen next?
It's going to heal, well, create whatever pus or
Yeah.
so-called pus to heal yourself and to get rid of the debris.
Get rid of the debris.
Right.
We call that bronchitis.
Okay.
Is bronchitis the therapy or the disease?
Well, now so the therapy or the disease? Well, I don't know because if you're labeling it bronchitis, but can we prove that it's bronchitis? Or I mean,
You got inflammation and mucus and cough, and you feel shitty, and you that happened because you breathed in some debris.
Okay, so then it's the therapy.
Right, obviously.
Right. Okay.
The disease is the getting the stuff in.
Right.
The therapy is the getting the stuff out.
Right. Okay.
But unfortunately, you go to the doctors who don't know anything about medicine, and they say, oh, you have a disease, so I'm going to stop you from getting it out. So they give you drugs so you don't cough it out. And then you build up debris over a lifetime. And then 20 years later, you get lung cancer, which is a bag of debris in your lungs. You say, why did I get lung cancer? Well, because you put debris in your lungs and somebody stopped you from getting it out.
Wow.
Here's the psyop here.
Okay.
The things we call symptoms, cough, mucus, pus, etc., or even elevation of blood pressure or memory loss, those are your body in its wisdom trying to heal you. And unfortunately, we have labeled those as 20,000 different diseases or so, none of which are actually diseases. The reason you get sick is because I used to say 3 things. You fall off a horse, right? So you have an injury.
Yeah.
You get poisoned, right?
Right. Yeah.
Various ways, EMFs, glyphosate, dust, debris. There's thousands of ways. You're starving, either love or nutrients, food, lots of different ways.
Wow.
And the 4th way is you're delusional, which is what most people have the reason why they're sick. They believe there's a virus.
Yeah.
And so they are delusional, and then that leads them to do things like put a mask on their face, which then breathes in toxic particulate stuff, which then your body has to make a reaction to get out, which is called COVID. And by the
Right.
way, what does COVID mean? It is a real thing that means the following.
Okay.
It means C, right? The letter C.
Yes.
That means like to look. See the ovid. Do you know what an ovid is?
No.
It's a sheep.
Why does that not surprise me?
That's what COVID means.
Why
See
does that not
sheep.
surprise me? Okay.
They're
Wow.
mocking you.
Yeah. 1,000%. On that note, Tom, where can people find you, connect with you, and learn more about your books and and then this fascinating, thought-provoking belief system that you're trying to change?
Okay, I was going to say the belief system that I have. I don't have a belief system. I have an examination of evidence. And the best place to find me is drtomcowan.com. And we
Excellent.
have a clinic and we have courses and we have stuff that can help you to have a better life. We have a drcowansgarden.com, which we have food items that are some of the best food you can get. And so we do a lot of stuff to help people live a better life, including not be delusional.
Yeah, I love it. That's awesome. You guys, I'll put those links in the show notes. So if you connected with Dr. Tom and want to learn more about or purchase some of his books, go click those links, go check him out, and go check out the food too. Obviously, we all want to live healthier lives. Dr. Tom, this is the part of the show where I like to ask for last words of wisdom or advice. What would you like to leave with us today?
Yeah, don't believe stuff that people tell you. It's usually wrong. If you don't know how they know there's a virus or how they know there's an atom, then don't believe it. Just say you don't know. And
Yeah.
once you find a claim, investigate it. If it's wrong, just it's wrong. You don't have to know what's right. Stay in that place of wonder. I don't know
Yeah.
who my parents are. Maybe someday I'll find out.
Wow.
That's the way to learn.
Wow. Amazing. Well, thank you so much for sharing your your opinion or what you've been studying. I mean, it's right. I don't know. I don't know how to word it, but it was mind blowing for me to learn those facts because they don't ever talk about that. And obviously, you've put the time into research and find out the true meaning behind a lot of the things that they're telling us. So, thank you for that. Thank you for blowing our minds wide open.
Good. All right.
All right.
Yep.
All right, guys. This is your host, Deanna Radulescu with Label Free Podcast. To live your best life, you must live label free. As always, don't forget to subscribe, follow, rate, review, comment, share, all those good things. And I'll be back soon with more dynamic guests.